Genesis chapter 24 and 25, starting with 24, Isaac and Rebekah. Abraham was now very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. He said to the senior servant in his household, the one in charge of all that he had, "Put your hand under my thigh. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac." The servant asked him, "What if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the country you came from?" "Make sure that you do not take my son back there," Abraham said. "The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me on oath, saying, 'To your offspring I will give this land,' he will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son from there. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there." So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master Abraham and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. Then the servant left, taking with him 10 of his master's camels loaded with all kinds of good things from his master. He set out for Aram Naharaim and made his way to the town of Nahor. He had the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. It was toward evening, the time the women go out to draw water. Then he prayed, "Lord, God of my master Abraham, make me successful today, and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I am standing beside this spring, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. May it be that when I say to a young woman, 'Please let down your jar, that I may have a drink,' and she says, 'Drink, and I'll water your camels too,' let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master." Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up again. The servant hurried to meet her and said, "Please give me a little water from your jar." "Drink, my lord," she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. After she had given him a drink, she said, "I'll draw water for your camels too until they have had enough to drink." So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw more water, and drew enough for all his camels. Without saying a word, the man watched her closely to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took out a gold nose ring weighing a beka. That is about a fifth of an ounce, or about 5.7 grams. And 2 gold bracelets weighing 10 shekels. That is about 4 ounces or 115 grams. Then he asked, "Whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" She answered him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son that Milcah bore to Nahor." And she added, "We have plenty of straw and fodder, as well as room for you to spend the night." Then the man bowed down and worshipped the Lord, saying, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on the journey to the house of my master's relatives." The young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he hurried out to the man at the spring. As soon as he had seen the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and had heard Rebekah tell what the man said to her, he went out to the man and found him standing by the camels near the spring. "Come, you who are blessed by the Lord," he said. "Why are you standing out here? I have prepared the house and a place for the camels." So the man went to the house, and the camels were unloaded. Straw and fodder were brought for the camels, and water for him and his men to wash their feet. Then food was set before him, but he said, "I will not eat until I have told you what I have to say." "Then tell us," Laban said. So he said, "I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has blessed my master abundantly, and he has become wealthy. He has given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, male and female servants, and camels and donkeys. My master's wife Sarah has borne him a son in her old age, and he has given him everything he owns. And my master made me swear an oath and said, 'You must not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I live, but go to my father's family and to my own clan and get a wife for my son.' Then I asked my master, 'What if the woman will not come back with me?' He replied, 'The Lord, before whom I have walked faithfully, will send his angel with you and make your journey a success, so that you can get a wife for my son from my own clan and from my father's family.' You will be released from my oath if, when you go to my clan, they refuse to give her to you. Then you will be released from my oath. When I came to the spring, I said, Lord, God of my master Abraham, if you will, please grant success to the journey on which I have come. Say, I am standing beside this spring. If a young woman comes out to draw water, and I say to her, please let me drink a little water from your jar, and if she says to me, drink, and I'll draw water for your camels too, let her be the one the Lord has chosen for my master's son. Before I finished praying in my heart, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, please give me a drink. She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I'll water your camels too. So I drank, and she watered the camels also. I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him. Then I put the ring in her nose and bracelets on her arms, and I bowed down and worshipped the Lord. I praised the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me on the right road to get the granddaughter of my master's brother for his son. Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn. Laban and Bethuel answered, this is from the Lord. We could say nothing to you one way or the other. Here is Rebekah. Take her and go, and let her become the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed. When Abraham's servant heard what they said, he bowed down to the ground before the Lord. Then the servant brought out gold and silver jewelry and articles of clothing and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave costly gifts to her brother and to her mother. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night there. When they got up the next morning, he said, send me on my way to my master. But her brother and her mother replied, let the young woman remain with us 10 days or so, then you may go. But he said to them, do not detain me. Now that the Lord has granted success to my journey, send me on my way so I may go to my master. Then they said, let's call the young woman and ask her about it. So they called Rebekah and asked her, will you go with this man? I will go, she said. So they sent their sister Rebekah on her way, along with her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, our sister, may you increase to thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the cities of their enemies. Then Rebekah and her attendants got ready and mounted the camels and went back with the man. So the servant took Rebekah and left. Now Isaac had come from Beer Lahai Roi, for he was living in the Negev. He went out to the field one evening to meditate, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rebekah also looked up and saw Isaac. She got down from her camel and asked the servant, who is that man in the field coming to meet us? He is my master, the servant answered. So she took her veil and covered herself. Then the servant told Isaac all he had done. Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Chapter 25, the death of Abraham. Abraham had taken another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan was the father of Sheba and Dedan. The descendants of Dedan were the Asherites, and the Lechishites, and the Lumites. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abidah, and Eldah. All these were descendants of Keturah. Abraham left everything he owned to Isaac, but while he was still living, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them away from his son Isaac to the land of the east. Abraham lived 175 years. Then Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man and full of years, and he was gathered to his people. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre in the field of Ephron son of Zohar the Hittite, the field Abraham had bought from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah. After Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who then lived near Beer Lahai Roi, Ishmael's sons. This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Ishmael, whom Sarah's slave Hagar the Egyptian bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, listed in the order of their birth. Nebaioth, the first son of Ishmael, Keter, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedemah. These were the sons of Ishmael, and these are the names of the 12 tribal rulers according to their settlements and camps. Ishmael lived 137 years. He breathed his last and died, and he was gathered to his people. His descendants settled in the area from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt as you go toward Asher. And they lived in hostility toward all the tribes related to them. Jacob and Esau. This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son, Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean from Paddan Aram, and sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau, which may mean hairy. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Means he grasps the heel, a Hebrew idiom for he deceives. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he was called Edom. Edom means red. Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." "Look, I am about to die." Esau said, "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Chapter 24, verses 1 through 4. Abraham had begun to inherit the promises of God by this point. He had fathered Isaac, who had become grown, and with the burial plot in Kiriath Arba, he officially owned property in Canaan, God's promised land. But God had not just promised a little land and a few descendants to him. He promised descendants as numerous as the stars and as plentiful as sand. So it became crucial for Abraham to find Isaac a wife. He commissioned the elder of his household, essentially his chief of staff, to go to his land and family to take a wife for Isaac. Abraham wanted to be sure that Isaac stayed true to the one true God, and he remembered the lesson of Lot, who became far too comfortable surrounded by godless people in a heathen culture. Rather than let Isaac get entangled in the same net with the Canaanites, Abraham looked to his homeland for Isaac's wife. This decision was so serious that he made the servant pledge an oath by putting his hand under Abraham's thigh, an intimate action commonly used in those days to affirm sacred oaths. Verse 5 through 9. Eliezer, who had some questions. What if the woman is unwilling to leave? Should Isaac move to be near her instead? Abraham redoubled his intentions for Isaac to remain in the promised land. He reminding Eliezer that God himself promised to give this land to his offspring. He had faith that God would oversee the journey so that Eliezer would find the right wife. Too many today lack that faith when it comes to finding a spouse. Only those who are committed to God and remain confident in God can expect to receive their romantic counterpart from God. Verse 10 through 14. The servant stepped out in faith and prayed for God to reveal the right mate for Isaac. The key piece of prayer is the specific request for the girl, to whom he would say, "Please lower your water jug so that I may drink," to respond by saying, "Drink, and I'll water your camels also." This would be an act of tremendous hospitality. It was customary in those days to offer water to strangers. It was incredibly rare, however, to offer to water a stranger's animals. Eliezer's entourage was not small either. He had brought 10 of his master's camels, and camels can drink up to 25 gallons of water. Verse 15 through 21. To bring enough water for all the camels would have required Rebekah to haul water back and forth from the well for hours, and yet without any prodding, after offering water to Abraham's servant, she also offered to draw water for his camels until they have had enough to drink. Not only that, but she also hurried to the well to do it. Rebekah showed herself to be a woman with a servant's heart and a bodybuilder's strength. Verse 22 through 33. Rebekah may have been a perfect match in terms of character, but Eliezer was still wondering whether she was from the right family. After all, he had been given specific orders to take a wife from Abraham's clan. Imagine his relief and thrill when Rebekah introduced herself as the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. It may seem odd to us, but it was comforting to Eliezer to realize that Rebekah was Isaac's cousin. Verse 34 through 48. We should not overlook the faithfulness of the servant throughout this story. He kept his mission in front of him at all times. He had obviously rehearsed the instructions given to him by Abraham so frequently that he was able to recount the entire interaction in extreme detail at a moment's notice. This lengthy retelling proves how serious his task was. He also shows that marriage relationships are much more important than a bride and groom might think. The purpose of marriage is not simply personal happiness, but kingdom fulfillment. Verse 49 through 59. The moment of truth came when the servant plainly asked Rebekah's family whether they would bless the marriage. Laban and Bethuel acknowledged that this is from the Lord, who had orchestrated the entire event. Interestingly, Rebekah too approved of the marriage, even though she had never seen Isaac. Rebekah was spiritual enough to submit her entire future to a husband she didn't even know because she was convinced God was at work. Verse 60. Rebekah's family sent her out with a blessing that ought to sound familiar. May your offspring possess the city gates of their enemies. There is no indication that the family knew of the promise to Abraham, which was phrased in precisely the same way. What may at first seem a coincidence is further proof of God's involvement. Coincidences don't exist. Verse 61 through 67. Just as Rebekah showed faith in agreeing to marry Isaac, Isaac also trusted God and his father with this match. Rebekah had her face covered with a veil until the moment of the wedding, so Isaac needed to believe that the woman God had chosen would not only fit what he needed, but would also be appealing to him. Apparently she was, because even though Isaac was grieving his mother's death, Rebekah was able to bring him comfort and love. Chapter 25, verses 1 through 6. The author mentions Abraham taking another wife, without seeming to comment on whether Sarah was still living when he did or the ethics surrounding the decision. Importantly, although God's established order was for marriage to be between one man and one woman, polygamy crept in early. Though the Old Testament does not condemn polygamy as frequently as we might expect, we see strong hints, even here, that the practice was problematic. Isaac, after all, was the son of promise, so Abraham gave everything he owned to Isaac. The sons of his concubines were only given a few gifts and sent eastward. The east, as we will recall, being a recurring negative symbol throughout Genesis. Verse 7 through 10. When Abraham took his last breath and died, it brought together his two previously estranged sons. Together, they buried him in the cave of Machpelah with his wife Sarah, but the family strife had hardly been buried with the patriarch. Verse 11 through 18. We find another genealogy here, which often indicates a shift in the plot. In this case, the author wants to confirm God's promise to Isaac, contrasting that with Ishmael. Even though Ishmael would have a lineage of his own and would live a lengthy life, the story leaves him behind and moves toward Isaac and his descendants. Names sometimes refer to the actual skin tone of dark-complexioned people. For example, Keter means to be dark. Thus, the Keterites are a dark-skinned people. Verse 19 through 23. Isaac and Rebekah encountered a problem similar to Abraham and Sarah's. Rebekah was unable to have children. We aren't given as much insight into Rebekah's struggle as we got with Sarah's, but note that they could not conceive for 20 years. When God answered Isaac's prayer to let her conceive, though, he did so in duplicate. As Rebekah began to wonder why her pregnancy was so active, God answered, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples will come from you and be separated. Even before their births, Jacob and Esau were battling one another, foreshadowing the coming conflict between their 2 nations, Israel and Edom. God also let Rebekah know another surprising detail about these twins. Unlike the custom of the day in which the older son would get the birthright and the blessing, the older would serve the younger. Verse 24 through 26. The twins were finally born. The older was covered with red hair like a fur coat, and they named him Esau. He was also called Edom, which is the Hebrew word for red. The younger came out grasping Esau's heel with his hand, so they named him Jacob, which means he grasps the heel. Jacob's name is an important one because it can also mean he strives or deceives. Both meanings prove prophetic over the course of his life, the deception part coming into play in just the next few verses. Verse 27 through 28. Personality differences are an enormous factor in the conflict between Jacob and Esau. Esau was outgoing, while Jacob was a homebody. By itself, this may not have been a problem, but it apparently led the parents to choose favorites. Isaac loved Esau because he was a man's man, and Rebekah loved Jacob because he loved spending time at home. Isaac and Rebekah were as much to blame as anyone in the feud between the boys. Verse 29 through 34. One day as Esau arrived famished from a day of hunting, he made an incredibly foolish trade. Esau gave his inheritance to Jacob in exchange for a bowl of food. We see here the character flaws of both sons. Jacob, quick to seize upon Esau's hunger, immediately decided to squeeze him for all he was worth. Sell me your birthright. He even made sure to put Esau on the hook by having him swear an oath. Jacob's grasping and deceiving ways are on full display here. Esau, on the other hand, proved to be impulsive and short-sighted. When faced with the prospect of losing his double inheritance, he reasoned, I'm about to die from hunger, so what good is a birthright to me? In other words, he settled for temporary satisfaction over hanging on to something much more spiritually valuable. This is why the author says Esau despised his birthright, because he considered it so insignificant that a single bowl of lentil stew became more important to him. The author of Hebrews cautions his readers to avoid being an immoral or irreverent person like Esau. Hebrews 12:16. Heed the warning. Never let physical satisfaction take precedence over spiritual priorities, which is something I've talked about numerous times on here. Whenever you do, you are despising that which is more valuable. Eternity. God's presence. Eternity. Our generation, saturated with lies about sex, needs this warning now more than ever. Don't be the impulsive fool that Esau was, throwing away your future for momentary pleasure. And that is the end of chapter 24 and 25. Continue to let that message sink in. Don't admire the physical over the eternal. Endure to the very end, seeking God's presence, seeking a relationship with God, believing with your whole heart in Jesus, and endure to the end, you will be saved. Constantly seek eternity with Jesus. That is the end of these two chapters. Be sure to like and subscribe. I hope everybody learned something. God bless everyone, and I will see y'all next time.